we just take all of the traditional stuff that you'd expect from a real estate or stock portfolio, a 401k, all those things, and we apply those to digital assets, and we do that in a regulated way over there at Digital Wealth Partners and at Digital Ascension Group at scale. So on that, it's probably a good time for my disclaimer. Nothing here is financial advice. It's only for entertainment and educational purposes. You should always speak with an attorney, a CPA, or a financial advisor before making any tax, legal, or financial decisions. The opinions shared here tonight are my opinions. They are not the opinions of Digital Ascension Group or Digital Wealth Partners. So we'll get into the macro a little bit, and then we'll jump into the questions. Markets are down a little bit right now, not a whole lot, still trending sideways when it comes to the crypto market. XRP hanging out at 132, 133. I haven't looked at Bitcoin. I am following the XRP Bitcoin chart though, and that's looking really good. That's looking like it's at the very end of its consolidation here in a very long wedge, and I would expect that XRP should break out against Bitcoin in the not too distant future if I was a betting man. And I am, because now I have another bet with scams. For the end of the year, $750 XRP again. And like I said on Monday night, I do believe I'm going to win the bet, but the premise of that bet is to make sure that people that have lost XRP to scams get their XRP back. That's what I'm looking to do. So, just like Poly Market, people can bet on timing and price and events. Very similar to what I'm doing with him. Some people like it, some people don't like it. That's okay either way. For me, I know I'm helping people out, and that's what matters on my side. So that's where things are at on the charts. As far as the macro goes, we're still hanging out at the top end of the range on the yen versus the USD. Around 159 is what I saw earlier today. It may have fallen a little bit more. They have been shorting oil, is what it looks like the Bank of Japan chose to do. We have seen a little rise this evening, back up to 159.26, which is a big jump from where it was earlier this evening. If we do continue to see that trend push higher, I think once we get pretty close to 161, 162, the Bank of Japan will have to intervene at that point. And if they're already starting to short oil in a way to be able to push down the inflation there in their economy, and if they're on the wrong side of that, if they're wrong-footed, when a short squeeze happens on oil, they're going to be in an even worse spot than what they are now. Yeah, at the open here, we just saw oil jump again from 15.5 all the way up to 16.6, 16,600 yen per barrel. That's a fairly good-sized little jump here, continuing to trend towards 17,000, 18,000 yen per barrel, which is where we saw it at the top end of when it ran up that Sunday when we, they shut down the Strait of Hormuz. Doesn't look like the strategic supply that Japan has and what they're putting on the market is slowing this down at all. I don't expect that it will. I think the damage is already done, and it's just a ticking time bomb until they're forced to raise interest rates there in Japan. Will they be able to hold that off till the meeting this month? Maybe. Maybe it happens sooner than that. Some other big news today. Ripple came out and they are providing their full scope treasury product for large enterprises and institutions that want treasury management of XRP and ROUSD and other liquidity instruments. That in correlation with Ripple Prime, they're able to then margin assets and provide liquidity real time and generate returns 24/7, 365 if it's all on crypto rails. So big deal going on there. You also have the Australian Financial Authority coming out and saying that anybody that's an exchange there in Australia or a qualified custodian will have to have their financial license here in the next 6 months. They have 6 months in order to be able to get that in place. We've talked to a couple different groups there in Australia here recently, and so that will affect them, and they will have to get licensed in order to continue to provide their services. So look out for that. And then we saw, I don't know if this is a rumor or not, but it sure would be fitting Apparently, Iran is saying that they're going to charge people for going through the Strait of Hormuz, and they're only willing to take payment in the Chinese yuan or cryptocurrency. If they're going to take Tether and Bitcoin, that could be cause for the U.S. government to sanction those networks. That would be, again, it wouldn't be unprecedented. We've seen the U.S. sanction another network before. They did that with Tornado Cash, so it's there. It could be done, but that would be a wild, wild scenario if the U.S. decided to sanction either Tether's network or Bitcoin's network. I don't know that they'll do Bitcoin. I mean, Trump's son, you know, and many people that he's involved with are pretty involved with Bitcoin mining. But Tether, you know, there's Howard Lutnick and all the people, Bo Hines. Again, they've issued USAT, which is a U.S. compliant stablecoin that's in compliance with the Genius Act, and USDT, their original Tether, is not in compliance. They are going through an audit. They're doing some other stuff. We'll see how that works out. But yeah, sure would be interesting if that was the catalyst for them to sanction Tether. Which actually, that whole premise came from Neil, who's a developer at Ripple. I was going back and forth with him on Twitter one day, him and Scams. This is probably 2-3 years ago. And it was actually after I put out the domino theory. So it had to have been back in like May of 2024 that he explained that. Because I thought, you know, Tether would depeg, was what the original thesis for the domino theory was when the reverse carry trade unwound. But if the U.S. government were to sanction Tether, which is what they stated was much more likely than Tether depegging, that would also cause a liquidity crisis and people divesting from Tether very quickly in order to alleviate the concerns that they might have by being associated with that network. And then they would need another liquidity source, demand for XRP, and all the things that, you know, many people here are hoping for. So that's where we sit on the macro side of things. Still just waiting for Japan to move here. It doesn't look like the Fed's going to, and somebody's got to blink. I think it's going to be Japan. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into the questions here. Again, appreciate you guys taking time out of your Wednesday. Please like, subscribe, share if you're getting value from this, and we'll go ahead and jump into it. We got Jesus is Lord. Great name. He says, yo, please do a pod with Apex Crypto Insights. You and he would love it. God bless. I'm game. You know, I always like to do podcasts with other like-minded people in the space, go back and forth, share thoughts. You know, I always like to learn from other people. We're on Cashew Nate, we're on Paul Barron, we're on Versana Mendel's, you know, Black Swan Crypto. There's a lot of other good influencers in the space that are extremely intelligent and share good information. And if you're not following those guys, highly recommend go check out their channels. Again, like I say all the time, I'm just one source of information. You should watch many sources to come up with your own thesis and making investment decisions. And again, consulting with a financial advisor would probably be ideal to make sure you're doing the right things. Mario Music Man says, thoughts on Sologenic Corium merger into Texacoin? As a holder of both, it feels like a lot of dilution resulting in a higher supply, but I'm hopeful. My wife April Fools me. Oh, jeez. It's like salt water.
Here's your real one.
Oh, thank you. All right, yeah, so the merger of Texacoin and these two, I don't know how that's going to work out. Sologenic and, you got me good. Texacoin's kind of like an MLM. They're basically putting, you know, they incentivize other people to bring you on to the network and sell the token and a bunch of stuff. Sologenic hasn't been that way, but Sologenic was kind of a rug pull early on. The founders, you know, got a release of their tokens after it ran up from 5 cents to $5, and there was a big drop off in the token, and it's taken a long time for that to recover. I don't think it's ever actually recovered. I haven't looked at Sologenic in a while, but let's take a look here. Actually missed out on that run up. I was looking at it at 5 cents with a friend of mine, and just didn't pull the trigger on it. Looking back, that would have been a great way to generate some additional XRP. Yeah, still hanging out about 5 cents here. I mean, you got the big run up in December of 21, up there to $5-6, and then it's just been a slow, steady decline since then. We're actually back at the low that we were at right before that run up. So if that is a tell, if the 5 cent threshold is really where the bottom end of this is, and there's resistance there, you could see a big run up again in Sologenic. If it is, you know, converging with this other network and there's actually going to be utility for it. Here's the deal for me. You know, when 1929 played out, there was the shoe shine boy and your barber and everybody else is telling you to get into the stock market. Do you know who told me about Texit Coin? My barber. So when I hear that this is the best thing since sliced bread from my barber, God love him, love Jeff, but you know, he has a lot of people come through his shop all the time. If I hear him, if he's the one telling me about an investment, I'm cautious. So I don't know. I would love to see it do well. I would love to see those people that have been holding Sologenic and Corium for a long time, you know, get a pop that they've been looking for, because I know many of them have been in it for a long time and want to see it come to fruition. But yeah, for me, it's nothing that I'm going to be investing in, but I will continue to watch it. Mr. Johnson, he says, Bluto, watch out for Popeye. Powell's term ends May 15th. Trump and Warsh want to lower rates. Say the U.S. drops internal return to 2.5, and Japan still has not had the reverse carry trade. What happens? It's not possible. If the yield for U.S. Treasuries is below the Japanese bonds, people will sell the U.S. Treasuries and swap into Japanese bonds. So there's not a scenario where you could drop interest rates that low here in the U.S. and the reverse carry trade would not unwind. They're at the edges. They know where the edges are. They've held interest rates in the U.S. and in Japan, and if either one of them move closer to the middle, there's going to be an unwind.
That one's not moving for out.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't trust you now.
It's okay, but you could show your new mug on camera.
Oh.
The other side. The other side.
Oh, I have to. It's the same thing.
Oh, okay.
See, real men drink tea.
We'll be backwards on TikTok.
Yeah, we'll be backwards on TikTok.
You have another one on Wednesday.
What do you mean I have another one on Wednesday?
And you'll have another new mug on Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Well, that'll be nice. People are sending me mugs because they want to see them on here, so that's cool. I do like the tea. Good. Yeah, I'm a little hesitant to drink this one after my wife got me with the salt on the first one. I don't know. Well, I'm sure we'll get to it. I'll have dry mouth at some point. I'll have to check it out. We got Nick. He says, "Hey mate, any updates on the latest ETFs and Curve?" Thanks. So I think Curve is the lever. Actually, it's the income ETF for XRP. What do I want to share? There's some information shared with me in confidence last night at the dinner. I won't say who. I won't say how they heard. But what I will say is, I, based on that information, feel like there's going to be a lot more ETFs coming onto the market in the not too distant future. And that will cause significant demand for specific assets. So if you're holding those assets, probably going to see some price appreciation and some benefit. Curve could be one of the ways to do that. Curve is an income ETF for XRP, I believe. It's either the levered ETF or the income ETF, but I think it's a 3% income ETF. Those are great. It's an allocation to the underlying asset through that ETF, and then you're going to get the dividend for however much you own when they pay that out on a quarterly basis. It's going to be less than 1% per quarter, but I mean, if it's steady income for you and you have a large portion in your 401k or your traditional portfolio, might not be a bad way to go about it. Smithy says, how big a threat is ROUSD to XRP? It is the reason that XRP is going to be successful. They are like peanut butter and jelly. Like, you really can't have one at scale without the other one. You need precedent for stable coins on the XRPL, and Ripple has set that with ROUSD. There's been over 1 billion ROUSD minted. They just minted like $193 million worth of ROUSD today. That was another big deal. We also had Ripple's escrow release a little bit earlier this evening. They relocked 700 million. They kept 300 million out. It's still sitting in the wallet. They haven't sold it out onto the market. Last month they sold about 200 million onto the market, so not the full 300 million that they have been holding or selling off in the past. So we'll continue to watch that wallet and let you guys know that is a way that they could absolutely constrict supply on the OTC desk and dark pools if Ripple does not sell that onto the open market. Be a lot less out there for people to buy through those ETFs when the volume does hit. But back to ROUSD and XRP. So banks and institutions want something that's stable and reliable, that they can audit, that's transparent, that they can use. They will issue their own stable coins if they're large enough, but you'll learn this about wealthy people. They use OPM, other people's money. So they will borrow money, do other things with it, issue margin against it, put it to work for them to be able to generate more than the interest, and then they, pay those loans back. So I think Ripple will sit in a unique position with Ripple Prime. They're able to then, use ROUSD or XRP as premium collateral, issue margin against that, and then put that to work in different ways to generate returns for those that are using it in Treasury or other enterprise applications. So ROUSD complements XRP. It's definitely not in competition with it. It's an issued asset on the XRPL by Ripple. So Ripple controls it. They can claw it back. They can freeze it. They can do a bunch of things with it. XRP itself cannot be frozen or clawed back. If you send it somewhere, it's gone. It's going to that other counterparty. I don't know if you guys have ever done that or not, where you send it to the wrong place. That's not fun. There's a big knot in your stomach because it's gone. Unless somebody's willing to send it back to you, which isn't the case most of the time. So all that being said, I love the fact that both of those things exist. It's kind of a figure eight. It goes into ROUSD and then it'll flow back to their XRP and then back into ROUSD. It keeps the liquidity in this ecosystem. Very similar to how Tether's been correlated to the rise of Bitcoin. The more liquidity that there's been in Tether, the more value Bitcoin has accrued over time. It would be very similar to how, more ROUSD and other stablecoins minted on the XRPL means higher price and higher volumes for trading, inevitably involving XRP to settle those transactions. Hard work. Work hard, play harder. Says, every time I think we're getting close, it drops another 15%. It's not down 15%. We're just hanging out around 130. Look, can't tell you what to do, but this is looking really good for a bottom. Okay, this chart right now does not look like it's going to go off a cliff. It looks like we're bottoming, and we should start to head higher in the near future. So, again, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm continuing to dollar cost average. Maybe I'm pacifying myself. Okay, so take it with a grain of salt. But I do think that it's looking like we're going to start turning bullish here in the near future. ARS says, thank you so much for the super chat. They say, hey Jake, remember when you said Japanese carry trade started on Sunday and the BlackRock ETF on Friday or Monday? What do you think about April 4th, 5th, or 6th, moving your fingers onto April 9th and posting yes 4 times on April 10th? It'd be interesting dates if that's the case. If you want to put your tinfoil hat on for a second, I think it was, it had to have been 2021. April 6th, 2021, Brad and many of the other accounts, including Bearable Guy, all tweeted that it was a good day. I can tell you that some of the other accounts that have tweeted that it's a good day a couple times. One of those days was May 28th of 2024, which was the day that the DTCC moved to T+1 with the option to settle through a digital asset real time, or T+0. So there's been, certain transitions that have happened in financial markets, regulation that's come out, where those accounts have tweeted, today's a good day type tweets. But there was, I don't know what happened on 4/6 of 2021. Here we are 5 years later, 5 days from now will be 4/6. So we'll see if anything comes of that. I'm not holding my breath for anything. Still require all of the macroeconomics to play out. But, if anybody's going to know anything, it's probably going to be Brad Garlinghouse. So I'm hopeful, just like everybody else is. I do think that April is going to be a very, very bullish month for the markets. The Clarity Act, supposedly in the next 48 hours, is going to have something come about that allows them to start voting on that in the near future. A resolution on the stablecoin and the yield is what I think they need. If they come to that consensus and they're able to move forward with that, I do think that they could go ahead and unwind the reverse carry trade, because the banks and institutions will be able to issue their stablecoins knowing what that's going to look like. And I think that is the last piece that needs to be in place before they can allow that to unwind. But yeah, I would love to see it 5th, 6th, and 9th, just like anybody else would. We'll just have to see, how things play out. Also, if you want to put your tinfoil hat on, again, these are all just things that I've noticed over the years. I'm not saying there's anything to them or not. But Bearable Guy, one of the Riddle accounts, has put out stuff about May, God bless you all, a couple different times. So maybe May is the month. I don't know. I just know that all of the macroeconomic indicators show that we are very close here, and everything is in place except for what yield looks like on stable coins for us to be able to move forward and see everything unfold like I've been talking about. Mr. Shook, good to see you, dude. He says, missing Austin already. Looking forward to Vegas. If the Clarity Act is in the next 48 hours, we doubt it. But they are claiming it. We should see action before, if they're right. Yes, that's my thesis, is that we will see price appreciation of XRP before the Clarity Act passes. Could be right before, but I do think it will be before. He says, thank you again for all that you do. Hello to the tea lady from Angelina. Thank you guys again for coming last night. Really enjoyed playing golf with you yesterday. We do some cool stuff for the mastermind. We have more in real life events for the mastermind than any other community in crypto, except maybe Crypto Mondays. I actually have a call with Lou tomorrow, so shout out to Lou over there at Crypto Mondays. Maybe we can get a Dallas chapter going. But yeah, I really enjoyed the event and being down there in Austin. If you've never been to Austin, it's definitely a different vibe. We were out in the countryside there in Austin. Rolling hills, beautiful scenery, great weather. If you're up north and you're cold and you want it to be a little warmer and a little sunnier and you like some golf, Austin's a great place for it. We got Craigie Bad Fingers. They say, Big J, what's up, dude? Playing musical to dunk people at weddings is getting hard knowing I'm pre-rich AF. What's Japan's deal? What's the straw that breaks the Japanese camel's back? Cheers for all that you do. I really do think it is the yield piece on stablecoins. If they don't have that figured out and the banks can't issue stablecoins at scale here domestically in the U.S., they're not going to have the recourse to soak up those treasuries as they flow onto the market from those foreign debt holders, including Europe and Japan and the other BRICS nations that would inevitably also pile on top of that when they see that scenario play out. So if that's not in place, we would have a complete collapse of our bond market. You do not want that to happen. Believe me, it would completely eradicate society as we know it. So I think that that's the final piece that's going to click in place, and then they'll be able to roll things after that. Mario Music Man, again, we already went over this one. We talked about Texas Coin and Sologenic and the others. I'm going to go to the bottom of the stack here and work my way back up. We got Sly Grizz. They say, what specific structural dependency in the financial system must be replaced or upgraded before XRP can realistically reach mass institutional adoption, and how far along is that transition right now? So when I was at Swell in 2023, Ripple talked about digital identity and custody, and they said that those were the bedrock of what would be required in order to get institutional adoption of these payment rails. We have both those things. We have digital identity on the XRPL, we have credentials, we have permission domain, we have permission dexes. We're waiting on liquidity pools and borrow lend, also as native features on chain. Ripple's made an acquisition of a couple different custodians and software in order to be able to facilitate that. And you have many other players in the market that have figured that piece out also, large financial institutions that'll be rolling out custody here this year in 2026. We know many of them because we've had conversations with them. I won't say who. But all that being said, the bedrock's there. They can scale it at this point. I do think that digital identity is still not quite where it needs to be, but it's there when they need it. And realistically, if you're actually going to utilize XRP, you're going to be using the XRPL. We're going to need some regulation around DeFi and who's supposed to sit where and how that's going to work. I think they may kick the can a little bit longer on the DeFi for the XRPL to be native. That's why we've gone ahead and created, return creating products that are securities offerings here in the US for XRP. And we want to tokenize those, and we also want to participate in DeFi as those capabilities come online. But we don't want to wait around for that to happen. We want solutions today, and so we've already created those. But all that being said, we're here. 2026 is the year, according to Monica Long, not me, for institutional adoption at scale for the XRPL and XRP. So we're just through Q1 here, first day of Q2, April Fools. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the April Fool's joke. My wife finally got me at the end of the day here with the salt tea. Okay, good. This one's legit. It's not salt water in my tea. But yeah, I think here in 2026, could be by middle of the year. Again, same thing for Tinfoil Hat if you want to put it on for a second. July 4th this year, we're going to be at the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Since 1776, July 4th. So they are going to do another ball drop for 2026 in New York on that day. They're also supposed to be issuing gold-backed treasury notes on that day. We'll see if those things transpire. Those are 50-year gold-backed notes, and that would finally reestablish gold backing our currency. And if you had gold backing those treasury bonds and people bought those treasury bonds to issue stable coins, the stable coins would not be fiat. There would be a one-to-one correlation, and there'd be a one-to-one correlation of the amount of gold that was required to back the treasury, and then there would be one-to-one correlation of the treasury to back the stable coin. So you would effectively be backing stable coins with gold if they were to back the treasuries with gold here in the US, which would stabilize our currency. It would do so many things for so many people. That is the crux of the problem here in the US for, I would argue, the majority of the problems that ail people today is that we do not have sound money. If you talk to people, they look at the 40s, 50s, and 60s as a time of significant prosperity here in the US. Guess what we had back then? Gold-backed currency. Since 1971, we've had free-floating exchange rates and they've been able to devalue our currency and inflate it away, basically erasing your wealth if you're trying to save money, which sucks for the average person, because they don't even know that that's happening to them. It's an invisible tax. So, all that being said, I do think that, by July, we should see some adoption of these networks, if not sooner. Tanisha, hey ma'am, she says, hey Jake, I appreciate you for sharing your knowledge. Anyway, do you think that 2500 XRP is a good amount for a person who lives a simple life? What would the lifestyle look like? So if you had 2500 XRP, we'll just say it goes to $1,000 this year. Okay, and again, not predicting that. I'm using round numbers. Okay, just for easy math for you. So that'd be $2.5 million. That's really not enough to retire on, even if you have a simple life. I don't know what your age is, but I'm going to guess that you are similar age to me. I'm going to say 30s or 40s. You still have a pretty long life ahead of you, especially with the medical advances that are going to be made over our lifetime. I think that people are going to be living much, much longer. And so to retire on that would be fairly difficult. Now, the advantage that you would have is it's in XRP. So XRP will continue to appreciate over time and continue to aggregate value and grow in value. So I don't know. I mean, you could put it to work in the short term and kind of supplement your income for 2500 XRP. To realistically retire, you would probably need a $10,000 XRP. At $10,000 XRP, you'd have, call it $25 million. That's enough to put to work and earn 5% low risk and have more than enough to cover all of your bills and expenses and be in a really good spot. And I don't think that that's too far in the future, right? Within the next two to 5 years is my time frame. Again, I could be completely wrong on that. You can call me out on it. I'm sure somebody will make a video and say I'm crazy. That's fine. I see these macroeconomic events playing out, and I see that the only solution is to drive liquidity into XRP to be able to settle stuff real time and de-risk on the back end of the stock market, de-risk the derivatives market, add additional collateral for institutions and the BIS to hold and back derivatives beyond just U.S. Treasuries that continue to be rehypothecated and lended over and over again. It's a giant house of cards on the derivatives market. They need something to shore that up. But all that being said, if you had 2500 XRP at a $10,000 XRP, you're going to be doing really, really well, and that would be more than enough to be able to, put to work at a very low risk, in a very low risk way, or borrow against a portion of it and service that debt, where you have, cash flow income or a line of credit that allows you to, live a simple lifestyle for a very long time. Now, it also depends on what part of the country you're in, what your cost of living is, how many kids you got. There's a lot of considerations on that, on what you want to do, but a simple life, I would say, simple and comfortable are two different things. I'm going to say comfortable. A comfortable life here in the U.S., you probably get by on $300,000 a year in most states. If you're in California or New York, it's probably closer to $500,000 a year between you and your spouse. And realistically, you'd need about $3 to $10 million in order to be able to make that in a fairly low risk way on an annual basis. And again, my definition of financial freedom is you make twice as much as you need every single month from passive income. Then you have a buffer, right? There's always more than enough there. And if you really wanted to be, ultra conservative, you'd probably say you need to be making 3 times your expenses every single month, living on 30% of your passive income. Jojo G says, hey Jake, will you be in Augusta for the Masters? Would like to meet you guys. That's a sore subject, Joe. We were planning on going, and things did not pan out the way that I was hoping for, unfortunately. And so we won't be able to attend this year, but we would be looking to attend in 2027. And I do think, we'll be working with the right people to actually make that happen next year. So, sore subject. I was really looking forward to that. It's on my bucket list, but we unfortunately will not be there this year. U.S. Marine Corps, 0311 Luke says, big in XRP, but ignorant and diversified in thoughts on Tau. So BitTensor seems really good. There's a lot of smart people. This person says Tiger ain't going either. No, Tiger won't be at the Masters this year either, unfortunately. Some poor choices over his lifetime, at a couple different points. Anyway, so back to BitTensor and Tau. There are some very smart people that I have a lot of respect for that think that Tau is fantastic and that BitTensor is awesome. The returns that are paid on BitTensor and that ecosystem sketch me out a little bit. It's difficult to sustain that over the long term. I'm not saying that it won't be around or that the yield might not come down over time and stabilize, but some of the people that are working in that network are generating 20% a month. Sounds great, just like Luna did until it fell apart. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen with Tau or BitTensor. I'm just similar to the other family offices we work with. When you're generating more than 8 to 15% in returns, I start to think things are a little squirrely, especially if it's on a consistent basis. I'm concerned about it. So that's my thoughts. I mean, it sounds like people are making a lot of money, and it's great for now. I'm more risk adverse than most people in crypto, and that's why I'm consolidated in XRP and not diversified, because I know what that's going to do, and so I don't have any need to diversify. The whole point behind diversification is ignorance, and like you said, ignorant, diversified, nothing wrong with that. If you are unsure on things, then you probably want to be diversified. But as far as Tau goes, like I said, seems great today. Smart people that I have a lot of respect for think it's great. I'm a little iffy on the return profile. Roughing It, sorry ma'am, I've been saying this wrong the whole time and my wife corrected me. So shout out to the tea lady. She's always making sure that I don't sound stupid. For trying to. Roughing It says, what do you think of the fact that ISO 20022 must be migrated into every bank by November 2026? And when you look up the compliant tokens, just saying. Thanks. So I think that they actually finalized the majority of the standard last year in November. They gave people another 6 to 12 months, I think, to the stragglers, but the majority of people have already migrated over to that. We did not see any price appreciation associated with the implementation of ISO 20022. That is a messaging standard, just so you guys are aware. Has nothing to do with value transmission. There are no ISO compliant tokens. No such thing. That's all BS. There are only 2 companies in the world that create the messaging software in compliance with the ISO standards that use cryptocurrency to settle, in addition to the messaging itself, and that's Ripple and Stellar. There are other tokens that work within that ecosystem of networks to be able to facilitate the messaging and settlement. Those could include Hedera, Algorand, IOTA, XLM, XRP, Quant, Overledger is, another application for that. So, again, none of those are actually ISO compliant tokens, because that's not a thing, because they transmit value, or they're an ecosystem to be able for that messaging to move on, but it's not the token itself that's compliant with the messaging standard. So I know that that's a misnomer out there. There have been people in the ecosystem that have made that delineation for a long time, and obviously at this point, there's not going to be a correlation with the implementation of the messaging standard But I will say this, it seems to be a precursor, right? So you need the standardization of the messaging system before you could have instant settlement, because if you're still having to reconcile data packets and information between two counterparties, because it comes in a different structure when it lands and you got to reconcile it before you can settle the payment, you can't move to real time. So this is a step in that direction. It is a precursor to the ability to settle real time, the implementation of that messaging standard ISO 20022. Back or Win says, if an entity like the IMF sets a price floor for XRP and the price continues to hover there long term, will that reduce or drastically reduce the ability to earn yield? You're awesome. Gunrope Mastermind, Carbon One. Good to see you, Brent. So if the yield was generated through volatility, absolutely. We have one of those products. So in the IRAs that we have for our clients, you can enroll in Arch Public. It's a proprietary strategy that we built with them to be able to generate additional returns on your XRP by trading your XRP inside of your IRA, whether that's a Roth or traditional IRA. We can do SEP, we can do all different kinds over there at Digital Wealth Partners. But what I will say is, to your point, if it's a very high stable value and there's not that much volatility in the token, the returns we're going to be able to generate on that are going to be substantially less trading it based on candles than it would be if there's more volatility in the market. The more volatility there is in the market, there's more volatility to harvest and therefore higher returns to be made. Now, what I will say is the more XRP that's locked up as collateral and margined, like Ripple Prime and others are doing, if you get that line of margin against that premium collateral and then go put that to work in other volatile markets, there is no reduction in returns that you could generate. You can point that margin or the line of credit anywhere you want that's going to be generating the highest return for you, or within your risk tolerance, whatever that might be. So direct trading products or algorithmic trading products, yes, that will reduce the return on those. But for the products and solutions that we're bringing to market and liquidity pools, I don't think that it's going to have any effect. I think that it'll actually help with the adoption of that, and you'll see more players come into the market. They're offering those types of solutions, and therefore, more competitive returns over time. Eric, he says, brother man, what's up, dude? Eric here. Just wanted to celebrate my birthday with XRP, bro. Cheers. Thanks to you and the T-Lady for all that you do. Happy birthday, dude. Appreciate you on the super chat and jumping in here with the 589. I hope you have a wonderful birthday and all of your wishes for 2026 come true. We've got occasionally wrong, never in doubt. Says, hey Jake, once XRP gets to $100, a lot of us will have spouses and family that want to cash out early. Can you make a short video to illuminate how $500 to $1,000 to $10,000 and further is possible, and post it at that time? I don't like. If your spouse wants you to cash out, you never go broke taking profits, okay? Everybody should create a plan. I would caution you against selling everything, okay? Anytime I have ever sold the whole bag, I've regretted it later. A couple examples of that were XDC, sold that at a penny, it went to 9 cents. Theta, sold that at $1 after buying it. At 7 to 9 cents, it went to 15 bucks. Chainlink, I bought it like $3.50, and we see where it is today at 30 plus. There's just been a bunch of them early on when I was trading where I sold the whole position thinking I did well, doubled my money, tripled my money, 10 times my money, and should have left a moon bag there. So, if your spouse is watching this, again, nothing wrong with taking profit, locking some of that in, getting your money back, and leave the rest to ride on the house. But at the same time, you are going to be missing out on those larger numbers and it's a cost to benefit, right? What can I use that money now for that would either, one, generate me more peace and ability to generate higher income, or what could I invest it in that's going to outpace XRP? You're going to be hard pressed to find anything that's going to outpace XRP, especially with the adoption at scale for the back-end settlement of markets and the derivatives. It's going to be very difficult to find anything else that's going to be moving at a 10x annually for the next couple years. That's my opinion, not fact. You know, I'm sure there's going to be people that, again, say that I'm crazy. I've said this before. I'm just one person on the internet. I obviously have strong biases toward this. Take it with a grain of salt. Watch other people. Come to your own determinations. I've studied this long enough and had enough conversations to feel very confident that that's the case. But again, your spouse may not have. And I can tell you this, causing strife in your marriage is not conducive for long-term wealth preservation. It would be better to come to a compromise and work as a team on things than it is to operate from a position of scarcity where you feel like you have to hoard things. Every time I've put money out into the world, it's circulated it. I don't call it spending money, I call it circulating money because it always comes back to me. But if you think about it that way, right, like maybe you're giving up the upside on the XRP for a portion of your bag, but the security that that's going to provide you in your marriage and that relationship is going to allow you to pull your head up and use the rest of that wisely. And if it causes enough strife that you guys separate, you're going to lose half anyway, right? And then, you know, hopefully it's well managed after that, but it's going to be much easier to have continuity in your children and the beneficiaries and everybody else if everybody's on the same page with the same goal and you guys have agreed on how you're going to get there. Not trying to counsel you in your marriage. I am the last person to do that. Just saying what's worked for me and my wife. Golly, dude, thank you for the super chat. He says, Legend, what do you think of the crypto company Metallicus? I don't even want to talk about this. It's associated with the Federal Reserve. We'll provide support to all of the cooperatives and use metal blockchain token XPR and loan. Can you tell us their importance and maximum price of each of the 3 tokens? I'm just going to plead the fifth on that. I don't want to talk about it at all. Every time people get up in arms, you're not going to like what I have to say about it, so I'm just not going to talk about it. Rick Johnson says, Jake, thousands of Jews would crash to the ground if the tea lady ever appeared. I say this because tea must be an 11 plus because you're a great guy. I mean, I would say my wife is very good looking. She, you know, I definitely, you know, swung above my belt when locking that down. So yeah, I would agree. Love for Life says, hey Jake, social member here. How would you explain why XRP will be more lucrative investment than owning Ripple? See you in Austin next time. Awesome, dude. So it's really just discrepancy in what the current valuation of the asset versus a company would be. So a couple different things. Ripple itself is significantly more valuable than XRP is to the marketplace today. So those that have invested in Ripple early have outsized returns. Well, I say that if you got in XRP at 0.03 of a penny, let's do some math here. I've got my calculator, handy dandy calculator, my Blue's Clues calculator. Oh, my phone's starting. Here it goes. Come on, there it is, calculator. All right, so the seed round for Ripple was like 49 cents per share. They just did a tender offer at $300 a share. So what is that? 300. If you were on, preferred A stock that people got in those early days, we're going to divide that by divided by 0.49. So that's a 612x on your money if you owned Ripple from the beginning to now. What about XRP? If you had XRP at 0.03 of a penny, and now it's $1.30, so we're going to divide $1.30 divided by 0.03 of a penny. That would be a 433x on your money. So as of today, Ripple, the early investment in Ripple has outpaced the early investment in XRP. Now, that's at the tender offer price. The actual price that the shares will trade at on the open market is probably a pretty close representation of the appreciation on XRP itself. Now, there have been other points in history where XRP has outpaced the appreciation on Ripple shares. When we saw the run-up in 2017, 2018, you probably would have been better off to own XRP than you would Ripple shares. As of today, because we've seen the bear market that's happened and Ripple continue to do well, Ripple is to the upside. So at different points in time, I would argue that it's probably better to hold one or the other. Over the long term, the argument that I would make for XRP being a better investment than Ripple would be the network effect, because it's a protocol. It's not capped per capita or income of the company, or an evaluation off of EBITDA or cash flows or assets. It is literally the volume and scale of the network that will cause the price to continue to appreciate and grow over time. Now, Ripple holds an escrow of XRP, and they use that token directly in order to facilitate their business at scale. So Ripple is a proxy of XRP, just like a DAT would be. And Brad's even in shareholder emails talked about the valuation of the company if they were to use the DAT ratios that MicroStrategy and BitMine and some of these other DAT companies have used, and it was substantially higher, like $600-700 million or $1 billion valuation. But that's with them controlling the full escrow. We know that the Clarity Act, when it passes, they're going to have to reduce their allocation or their total ownership of the token to less than 20% over the next year or 12 months. It's going to be difficult to do as the escrow is controlled by Ripple, and they do have multiple wallets that they could divest or give to other counterparties. I think that they have a plan in place to be able to do that. But all that being said, Ripple's always going to be a proxy for XRP. Ripple shares are never going to be tier 1 collateral. You're never going to be able to get 90 or 100% margin against your Ripple shares. You're not going to be able to use those to back ETF or derivatives. Now, will it trade at a multiple of NAV? It's possible. I would say our company, Digital Ascension Group, is probably a levered play on XRP also, right? So, if you wanted a levered play on XRP, I think Evernorth is probably a better proxy for, getting a 1.2 or 1.5 MNAV versus Ripple, just because, Ripple does hold that on their books, but they're going to have to divest a large portion of the XRP that they currently own over time in order to be compliant. So I think they're both good. I have an allocation to both, and we've done a lot of deals in the mastermind over the years for Ripple equity. I can talk about that because those are closed. But all that being said, I think that both are great opportunities. They'll probably track pretty close, but at different points in time. I think in the short term, as we see the adoption of this network and protocol and the asset itself, it's probably going to outpace Ripple, and then Ripple will probably catch up, and then it'll go back and forth over time. So if you were trading it, like if you were trying to track the price of Ripple shares versus XRP, and there was a chart that correlated that, you would see what the mean was, and you would see when it was more beneficial to hold XRP or Ripple equity, depending on where you were on the chart. I know that's a hard, like, think about, real estate priced in gold versus dollars, and when it would be better to hold real estate or when it would be better to hold gold for, the peaks and troughs on that chart. Very similar to like XRP versus Ripple equity. That was the one we just answered. Honest Aim, good to see you. He says, Mr. Legacy, Austin was fantastic. Group was high class, high vibration. Can't say enough about all the Beyond Broke Mastermind there. Wife and I agree. These are our cruise or mountain retreat buddies post-price appreciation. Thanks to the tea lady. Yeah, we had a really good time last night. A lot of good people, breaking bread, having conversations, getting to know each other, networking, and setting up relationships to be able to leverage those, post-price appreciation. Till Valhalla. Shout out to the mods over there in the Discord. We had a couple of them there last night. We also had some of our advisors from Digital Ascension Group there, answering questions for people. And yeah, just really blessed and grateful for our full team and all the people that are willing to help and take time out and support the mission of what we have going on. Lucifer's stepkid says if institutions can actually use the XRPL without using XRP, why would they adopt it? Because it would be faster and cheaper. If you could be faster and cheaper, you're going to pick that option. And if you're already using it, you're going to issue assets on it because it creates the functionality and the environment that you need in order to facilitate your business and have the most liquidity and access. That's what you're going to use. There's a DEX, right? So it's going to route orders through that DEX, through whatever's going to be the cheapest, fastest way to make that payment. And if there's enough liquidity in XRP, the default mechanism for that's going to be XRP. Now, are there going to be other liquidity pools that don't route through XRP? Sure. Because there's going to be enough liquidity there that it's actually faster to move through, that liquidity pool or that currency is accepted by both counterparties, and they'll just settle in that. But the majority of the time, when there's an exchange of value from one asset to another, issued assets on the XRPL or on other networks, it'll settle back in through XRP because of the DEX and the routing on the network. So again, XRP also is agnostic. There's no way to freeze it or claw it back. It's a sovereign asset, whereas the issued assets on the network for people using it can be clawed back and frozen, and there's a third party that's in control of those assets, which for sanctions and other things, sovereign nations don't want the U.S. to have that authority any longer. And that's why you've seen, CHIPS, which is a competitor to SWIFT, and the BRICS nations kind of separating themselves away from the U.S. dollar over the last 10 years. Designers Shiner 32, he says, do you know anything about the channels like Bull Runner and Altcoins Pro, their yield-bearing strategies? How legit are they? I don't know. I've never used them. I don't know anybody that's used them. They could be great, for all I know. I've watched Bull Runners a little bit here recently. So he's buddies with a gentleman that I know here in Dallas that manages the largest AMM on the XRPL, and has a pretty substantial position at XRP. They're buddies and they've promoted some things together. So shout out to Bull Runners. As far as I'm aware, he's a good guy. Can't speak to the products or solutions that they offer. I know nothing about them. They could be great. They could also be a complete sham. I'm not advocating for or against them. I'd have to do more research to give you, a real answer on it. Primal Weights says, what's up, Beast Mode? Carbon One, LLC, DWP client, and San Fran arm wrestling champ. Since we are listing accolades, thank you for everything you and the Tea Lady do. Hoping to see you guys again in XRP Vegas. We will be there. We'll have an event Wednesday night after 6-8J's event. If you're part of the mastermind, you'll know where that is. Excited to see everybody there in Vegas. Again, appreciate you working with us. over there on the wealth management side and to set up an LLC. If you have at least $50,000 to $80,000 in digital assets and you believe that they're going to go much, much higher, a lot of people have worked with us to be proactive, to structure an LLC to manage those digital assets. We structure a holding company in Wyoming that manages alternative investments with a sleeve for crypto. Makes it a little bit easier to get a bank account. We're actually about to roll out our white labeled app with Uphold here in the near future. More on that when I can talk about it. But you will get a bank account associated with the LLC very easily and seamlessly through that application. You'll be able to hold your other assets that we can't advise on or hold there at Anchorage inside that application. We'll work to be able to integrate DeFi and other solutions to be able to provide more avenues to generate returns or yield on your assets there in the Uphold app in a regulated, compliant, insured, structured way. So really excited to get that to market. Again, appreciate you working with us on that. If you want to work with us to set up an LLC, we've done over 8,000 LLCs in the past 3 years, helping people make sure that their stuff is structured correctly to mitigate taxes, have creditor protection and anonymity out of an estate plan, structured out of Wyoming. So if that sounds cool to you, you can go to digitalfamilyoffice.io and use the code 50OFF, 50OFFDAG LLC. That's 50OFFDAG LLC. Get you everything end to end for $2,000. And if you wait a week, it might be a little bit cheaper in the near future. DFW Mike says, good evening, boss. Last night was freaking awesome. Seriously, appreciate everything. Sophia says hello to the tea lady. Stay blessed. Appreciate that, dude. I was excited to see you there. Appreciate you hosting all the fantastic events that you do for the Mastermind members. Lots of them here in Texas, and the event that you're going to be hosting up there in Washington in the near future. So, again, appreciate you for all that you do and the support, and it was great to see you again last night. You got Chad XRP. Is this like Giga Chad? You got a really strong jawline, my man. He says, Beyond Broke Mastermind here. Which do you think will be bigger long term? XRP, Ripple Treasury, or Ripple Prime? It's not like you can invest in Ripple Treasury or Ripple Prime versus XRP. Like Ripple owns both of those entities, so if you owned Ripple equity, you would, own both of those effectively. Long term, bigger. I'm still gonna have to go with XRP because it's a protocol. It's not a company. It's not capped. It's the market cap thing that goes along with companies just doesn't make sense for protocols and networks. That's the argument that I've had for a long time. I put out a full white paper on what I call the liquidity index. That's very different than market cap, and I think a much better indicator for certain digital assets that are moving value over these protocols and networks. But all that being said, I think that XRP will continue to escalate in value substantially more over time versus a company that's publicly traded or held privately like Ripple currently is. It'll track close, and again, I think there'll be different points where one does better than the other, just as it has in the past. But I think over the duration, XRP itself will likely be the winner. Alex Molnar says, you mentioned before that the new LLC set up with Uphold, would business still be set up in Wyoming? Yep, we still file everything in Wyoming. What's the difference between Corporate Shield and Corporate Veil? It's basically the same service. Ours is just automated and much easier to use. We stay on top of it a little bit more than the company that we were currently working with not that long ago. And that was one of the reasons we separated ways. The level of service and expertise for what we do is just not up to the level that we needed to be, and we wanted to reduce costs and be able to pass those savings on to clients, which you'll see here in the near future. Also, any other difference now in the LLC setup? Just additional stuff that we're providing. Still get the registered agent. Many of the registered agents are out of the same address there, so you're not going to have to, if you have that address on your checks or something, you'll be fine. You don't have to change that. It's not like those checks are void. We've had some questions about that. All those registered agents offer us out of the same location, pretty much. Separate of that, virtual office, we're going to have IT services. So if you want a domain and an email associated with your company, much easier, much faster. We're going to be providing those things for clients through the application. It'll first be a web portal that you log into on your computer, and then later on we'll have a mobile native app that we release. We have a really cool developer that we've brought over. She used to work at Gemini and she helped them with their app. So excited to have her on the team, and she's working diligently to be able to get that application up and going for you guys in the App Store in the very near future. So yeah, everything that we had before and more, and done in a way that's much more seamless and easy to use versus having to, call and remember this or remember that. It'll all be documented right there in the app. You'll be able to separate the cash flow much easier, corporate fail, written actions, written consents, meeting minutes, board resolutions, all of it done right there in the application, without, a bunch of extra stuff. But if you still need to call somebody, we'll have people available to help walk you through things if you get confused. Sultan Mohammed says, "Hey Jake, do you know XRP Las Vegas discount code?" I'm gonna stay away from that topic. Well, I'll say this. We sponsored last year. Really loved our time at XRP Vegas last year. We were next to another group there last year that's the main sponsor for DAI and Brad's channels. And when we reached out this year to participate in the event, they would not respond to our emails. So I don't know what the beef is or why they're upset with me, but it seems as though they are. Now we will be in Vegas. We're sponsoring Bitcoin Vegas since XRP Vegas won't have us. We're going to sponsor Bitcoin Vegas, and we'll be there speaking earlier in the week, and we will be, around the other events that are taking place in the city, through the duration of XRP Vegas as well. Calism says, Carbon One here. Good to see you, dude. Please explain, like I'm 10, how exactly XRP will help with the reverse carry trade unwind. Each step, both sides of the transactions need to agree to use it right. Who decides? When does BlackRock enter the picture? I mean, I've literally made 4 whole videos on it, and I tried to explain it as simple as it possibly can. I also just made a video on the liquidity index and, tried to keep that super simple and basic for, even like a 3rd or 4th grader to be able to understand it. Sorry. Sometimes, like, I love answering these questions, but when it's the same one, like, over and over and over again, it gets a little redundant. So, but I'll try here. So the reverse carry trade, just as like the starting point. People have borrowed a bunch of money from the Bank of Japan at low interest rates. So what that means is the cost to borrow that money was basically free. They basically got free money. Now, that's only for a period of time. And then notes come due and you have to refinance stuff, you have to roll that debt. There's a set term or duration on those notes. As the interest rate goes up, if you borrowed that money and you can't pay back the whole thing, or you don't want to pay back the whole thing because you're using that money to make more money, it might make sense to unwind those other positions that you have in order to repay that note, because it becomes more costly if you don't than what you're making in the markets. That's effectively what's going to happen with the reverse carry trade, is the return they're getting is going to be less than the cost of the note if they don't repay it. And that's because Bank of Japan's raising interest rates. They need to do that because there's inflation in their economy. That's how they strengthen their currency against other currencies, as they raise their interest rates. Their bond yield continues to rise. Again, this is hard to explain to like a 10-year-old because there's just a pretty significant portion of macroeconomics that's involved. But the premise behind it is free money was given out. That free money is due back. Otherwise, it's going to cost more than what you're making on it. They're going to have to repay that. And that's going to set off a cascade of events that will inevitably lead to a liquidity crisis where nobody can move money until they move to real-time settlement to be able to de-risk, you know, the positions that they have, and also offset debts by the rise of that asset. So you have assets and liabilities. Right now, liabilities are sky high, assets are low, but if they start using XRP and they drive liquidity into it to cause the price to go up, similar to how they repriced gold in 1944, or 1933, excuse me, you would have a similar scenario where assets, you know, offset liabilities again. As far as BlackRock goes, I think that they're going to enter the fray, you know, along with a lot of the other ETFs that are coming to market here in the near future. And that's what's going to drive the supply shock on XRP to push it to the prices it needs to be. And I think it needs to be timed very appropriately in order for them to be able to achieve what they're looking to do. Redeemed Adventures says, Trump tonight, war to end soon. The oil, gas, and everything will rapidly come down. Sorry to say that's not going to happen. Won't the BOJ simply wait this out and allow things to simply come back to normal levels, for meaning I don't know how to tell you guys that I know this is going to happen without coming out and telling you, like, I know this is going to happen. So any of these questions where people are like, you know, well, what about this, and what if this happens, and how if that happens, like, I've already played all these scenarios out in my mind. I've already worked through all of them. The Strait of Hormuz has been shut down too long. It takes months for oil flows to get back to where they were. The inflation is already ripping through the economy. You're going to see $150, $200 oil. That's already been projected by not just me, a bunch of the other large financial institutions. It's not going to matter if the war ended tomorrow. If they took boots off the ground and they removed their military and the Strait of Hormuz opened, you're going to continue to see inflation rise because there's going to be a bottleneck and people moving oil for whatever period of time in order to get it to where it was supposed to go. They've got to return the refineries back on. The damage is done at this point. We are going to see the reverse carry trade unwind. Japan is going to have no choice after they short oil. They're going to have to start selling U.S. treasuries, and they're going to have to raise their interest rates in order to be able to save their own currency and their own economy. If they do not do that, they are screwed. Like, their economy implodes. They're going to look out for themselves before they look out for the world. And they have a solution for all of this sat in the background ready to go. So why wouldn't you use it, right? Like, this has been planned. I don't know how to explain to you guys that, like, it's not me. I didn't come up with this. I just stumbled upon the sequence of events based on other conversations that I've had over the past 3 years and watching people much smarter than me, and I was able to put this together in a way that made sense coherently, and then shared it with y'all 2 years ago and refined that over the last 4 videos that I've put out. And then who else called for the Strait of Hormuz to get shut down? I'll wait. I don't know anybody. I'm pretty sure I was the only person that was saying that. So if you think that, like, COVID, like, things that make you go, like, is this real? That's one of those. That's never it's unprecedented. Never happened in history. So for that to take place and that to begin the sequence of events that causes this to happen, the rest of these events are going to happen. XRP Lou says, if interoperability stablecoins remove fragmentation, where does a neutral bridge asset like XRP still create unique value? I love you guys. Y'all ask good questions. They just get repetitive over time. I've done these for probably 3 years now. Come on here almost every Monday, Wednesday, and answered all these questions over and over again. Okay, so if you understand stable coins and you understand, Swift and all these things, there's Nostro Vostro accounts. Nostro and Vostro means yours and mine. And right now, banks lock up about $27 trillion globally in order to be able to facilitate those trades and transfers. Stable coins, if banks want to use those, just exacerbate that problem. because now instead of just sovereign currencies that these banks are going to be holding, they're going to have to hold the stable coin of all the direct counterparties that they want to settle with. So it locks up probably double or triple that amount of money if you don't have a neutral bridge asset to be able to settle all of that and unlock that $27 trillion, which is the whole premise behind moving to this technology. Other banks don't want to use other banks' stable coins. They want to issue their own stable coin, hold the treasuries, generate the yield, and be able to settle internal affairs. And then when they send a payment to somebody else, Citi doesn't want JPM coin. Bank of America doesn't want Goldman coin. Okay, they want their own stable coin. So they want to settle in that on the other side of that transaction. The only way that they can do that, if the other bank is going to be sending a payment in their stable coin, is to route that through XRP and settle through the DEX in the token that they want to receive on the other side of that transaction. So it just exacerbates the need for XRP if we do see the actual adoption of stable coins at scale globally. And that's again to the point I made earlier about ROUSD. That stablecoin on the XRPL sets the precedent for how all of this is supposed to work and how you're supposed to use those things, and it allows other people to copy that same functionality for their stablecoin, and it continues to drive demand for XRP. Curtis Rees says, Jake, are you able to give us another Tiger Claw roar? Rawr. That's a cougar. It's not the Tiger Claw, though. Yeah, speaking of Tiger, I feel bad for Tiger right now. I don't know if you guys saw or not, but he rolled his Range Rover, I guess, still taking some drugs and doing some things. He got a DUI. You know, they blew zero when they did the breathalyzer on him. I'd love to believe that he didn't have anything in his system and they're just, you know, kind of coming after him, but this is not the first incident like this, unfortunately. Praying for him and his boy. You know, he was like real close to getting back on the path and, you know, getting more majors than Jack. I'd love to see him win one more, so that he has 15 majors, which is one more than Jack Nicholson. Maybe we'll see it. We already went over this one. All right. I'm going to go all the way to the bottom and work my way back up. And if you've already put in a super chat and I haven't answered it, I will get to it. But if you are putting one in after this, I might miss it. So apologies for that. All right. You guys are pretty good. After 10 o'clock, you'll know. I'm probably not going to get to all of them. Mr. JJ says, recently there's a lot of press release coming out about Swift regarding the shared blockchain ledger launch, threat to the XRPL, or bullish for XRP. Swift cannot use anything other than XRP to settle. It will be an amalgamation of multiple blockchains in order to facilitate all the trades globally. Chainlink will be involved. I think Hedera could be involved. Lena, their blockchain, could be involved. But it'll all settle back through the XRPL, either interoperable with Corda for their private permissioned ecosystems that Swift would adopt, or RippleNet. And I'm pretty confident that it'll be R3 Corda that they partner with, because Brad Garlinghouse has talked about, you know, by 2030 they would have about 14% of Swift's network. And that's, you know, nowhere close to 100%. So if Swift isn't going away, which we know, I would expect that they would use R3, and R3 Corda's primary settlement mechanism is XRP. So bullish for XRP. Solana Noise, Silas. They say, hey Jake, question, after price appreciation and able to retire before 30, what are your thoughts on when you should tell your girlfriend or fiance about the wealth? Well, she's with you before, so that's ideal, right? Like, she's not marrying you for your money, she's not with you for your money. Now, there are certain dynamics in relationships. When I was younger, I always felt like I wanted my spouse to be independent, and she is, and, you know, love me for who I was and not for material reasons. my wife is very frugal. She does not spend money on a whim. She tries to be conservative. She loves a good deal. I love all those things about her. Sometimes I wish she would, live a little bit for herself and live a little bit more in abundance than she does. But I also appreciate how frugal she is, and I know that she's not ever gonna do anything. She's not gonna make poor choices with the wealth that we're gonna have over our lifetimes. She's probably a far more conservative than I am on stuff. She would rather just hold cash, which, she's coming around to the fact that that's a losing proposition and understands more now that, investing that capital is a much better way to preserve that value. Still not, she doesn't like it, but she understands it. And I don't like it either. Like I said before, I want our currency to be backed by gold again, and then you will be able to save dollars and not just to have this, invisible tax of inflation eroding your wealth over time. But all that being said, because she's with you before, price appreciation, I think you found a good one. And I don't know how you feel about a prenup or not. Sounds like you guys aren't married yet. If you feel like she has played a role in your ability to procure this and provided stability in a home and gave you the sense and clarity to be able to generate more income to continue to allocate to this, she probably deserves some of it, right? You guys are a team, and you want to foster that. Like I talked about earlier, you and your spouse should be partners. You guys should be on the same team. You should understand where you're going and how you're going to get there together. And if you're at odds on that, it's not good. You're not going to get to where you're going if you guys are at odds on that. So the more frequently you can sit down, even if it's on an annual basis, and map out the next year when you guys are going to travel, vacations, what you're going to do with kids, and how you're going to get there together, and make compromises in order to be able to make sure that you're on the same page, it makes a big difference. So it's up to you. If you don't feel like she's played a role in your ability to procure this, and you want to keep it separate of her, you obviously have the option to do a prenup. But it sounds like you're in love and you care about her, and she has helped you with this, so you probably don't necessarily need that. Now, your children's spouses might need to sign prenups there, because again, they're going to have money to start with, and the spouse may know about the money, and you want to mitigate risk of loss on that side. But as long as they're married, they'll be able to enjoy the fruits of the trust and all the stuff that you structure for them. So again, I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I think that you should have morals and principles and ethics that you abide by, core values and beliefs. Figure out what those are for you, and then structure things accordingly to that. And don't, I put out a lot of different content. There's a lot of different options out there on how to structure stuff. Again, like I said, there's no perfect way to do this. There's just your way of doing it. And that's, again, going to be dependent on those variables for you. So that's probably not the answer that you wanted. I don't know when the right time to tell your fiance is about it. Probably post price appreciation. And you might, I don't want to say keep secrets, but sit on it for a little while and just, get used to having a large amount of wealth. 6 months, 3 to 6 months. And just get used to having it there. My wife says, tell her when you have a vacation booked. Take her somewhere nice and let her know then, I guess. But again, Patrick David, there's a book that's 100 questions before you get married. If you wanted to go through those 100 questions with your spouse and run all that down, probably not a bad thing to do. And that way, again, you guys get on the same page before you take that step and get married. Troy says, hey Jake, Beyond Broke Mastermind, Carbon 1, DWP client, awesome dude, glad to be working with you, excited to have you there in the community. He says, thanks for all your team does for us. Used to say it would be negative for XRP if clarity first, still buy. it would allow for the moat that XRP has to, I don't want to say be penetrated. Like, the XRPL still has a moat because of digital identity and the amendments that have been passed on the XRPL that meet compliance standards. So even in the face of opposition, I think that XRP will be the clear winner to many of the financial institutions. There will be other options and redundancies, but the majority of settlement will move through XRP and the XRPL, irrespective of if Clarity passes or not. I just think if XRP were to be adopted prior to the Clarity Act passing, it would be very difficult for anything to challenge it at any point in the near future, or really ever, because it would have so much at any point in the near future, or really ever, because it would have so much at any point in the near future, or really ever, because it would have so much